Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Today we have a special guest back with us on the show. We have Nephente of the metal band Netherbird. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you kindly. Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, give people who might not be familiar with Netherbird a little bit of history behind your band.
All right. Well, Netherbird was founded by myself and two other individuals in 2004. So we've been around for 15 years. And we play, I would say most slap the melodic black metal, sometimes mellow death, but we play, I'd say, heavy metal infused by a lot of black metal and a lot of death metal, and quite in the vein of the early Scandinavian metal scene from the early 90s. We're pretty old school in that sense. So we have released, this is, the upcoming album is the 5th full length. So we, that sort of summarizes it.
And you and Bismarck, both founding members of the band, writing music, like you said, for over 15 years together. What do you attribute to the chemistry of the two of you to keep being creative with the band?
Yeah, well, we are sort of the yin and yang. We are very similar in the sense that we love the creative process. And we are very different in the sense that he's quite, he's very musically apt, and I'm an old school primitive brute. So we sort of grind things from those perspectives to like. So, I mean, it's a duality there that's been going on for 50 years. And I think we find a lot of new inspiration every time we get writing, actually. So I think we progress as a songwriting duo, if that makes sense. And we have a lot of different influences, but when we come together, it always turns out to be, Netherbird in the end. So, yeah, that's more or less how I view it. We try to keep it fresh by not making the same album over and over again, and I guess we've been evolving as musicians and as songwriters, and the band evolves with that.
And since last we talked, you had a few lineup changes on Mick Andre and Frederick Anderson. So tell us about acquiring them in the band and what they bring to the lineup.
We have two guys been around for quite some time. It's Nord, who plays guitars and does backup vocals live together with me. And then we have Tobias, who used to be the bassist, but he's a remarkable guitarist and lead guitarist. He's also been around for almost 10 years. Newer guys is Mickey, who plays bass and does backing vocals live, and Frederick, who's the drummer since 2016. He used to play with Amon Amarth previously, and he's always been active in the underground with his other bands, Descending being the most prominent right now. Of course, these new guys bring vitality and new perspectives, which we really need. Mick is quite a stage presence and quite enthusiastic. And Frederick he brings, a wealth of experience, tons and tons of experience. But he's still hungry for the underground metal, which to me is remarkable after being, drumming on a professional level for almost 2 decades. But he's still hungry. So, that's for us, it's quite inspirational to have him on board, and he's being, enthusiastic about the stuff we do. It's an infusion of new blood, which is not, young blood, but new blood. It's been vitalizing, I have to say. And I think the new album reflects that also. It's perhaps a little bit more energetic than the previous one.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about. Your new album, which will be released by the time this aired, called Into The Vast Uncharted. Now, did you have any guests appear on this one?
No, there are no guests whatsoever in this one. So this time around, it's a band effort. The previous album was basically recorded by me and Bismarck, because we've sort of disbanded the band when we just reactivated the band when we did the last album. So it's basically him and me and and Fredrik Vidix, who used to play with Marduk, who plays on that one. Now it's a full lineup, and so we focused on what we can do together. So no guests on this one, no.
So the last 3 albums, right? The Ferocious Tides of Fate, The Grander Voyage, and now Into the Vast Uncharted, all have somewhat maritime titles to them all. So are the 3 kind of tied together somehow?
I think, you don't know when you do stuff really, but in hindsight, you can see that they're all reflections of a journey, I would say. Especially The Grander Voyage is more about, the outreaching journey of life. Discovery, wonder, pain, hurt, all the stuff we experience along the road. Into the Vast Uncharted is more introspective, which is one hell of a voyage itself. But yeah, I think when I write lyrics and titles and stuff, they all tend to be maybe a bit megalomaniac sort of stuff. So it tends to be these grand gestures. So yeah, there's like a theme of progression on all 3 albums, but a little bit different thematic settings. Maybe, if that makes sense.
It does. So tell us a little bit then about some of the subject matters of the new album and like where you draw your lyrical inspiration, not to sound too generic from, but in writing the lyrical content of the songs.
I write stories or reflections, and like I said, it's a little bit perhaps introspective because I've been on a pretty tough journey as of late, and I think that might be reflected in the stuff I write. But I try to write open-ended material, so I'm not telling people what to think or how to interpret stuff, and it's not too literal, I hope. So I try to keep it as existentialistic glimpses of, or reflections rather, but I think you can trace a little bit of the introspective, introverted reflections in the latest album, I think. But it's all about the struggles and pains and sometimes the joys of the human condition. To be alive and to try to make sense of the world around us. But if I'm successful as a lyricist, every person should be able to sort of come to their own conclusions of each song. So hopefully they're still, open for interpretation. And so I guess whatever conclusion you come to is the correct one. But my inspirations is mainly stuff around me, stuff that happens, people I meet, books I read, art I look at. Pretty mundane stuff actually, but I try to make it a little bit more, I wouldn't say generic, but maybe impersonal in the sense that I want people to be able to draw their own conclusions of what they read from the lyrics, if they care about the lyrics. Not everybody does.
And before we even open up the album, we're treated to like a beautiful cover. So tell us about what the cover art depicts and who the artist is.
Yeah, August Malmström is the name of the painter, and it depicts. It's a landscape in moonlight with dancing fairies, sort of the ghost dance, and I just love the painting in itself. Because it looks fantastic, and it hangs in the National Museum in Sweden. So,
oh, wow.
Into the Vast Uncharted can either be interpreted, as you go into some vast space, or you could go beyond the obvious existence of this world. And if you look in the Arthurian legends, with King Arthur and the boys, It was reputed in those stories that when you could meet fairies, it meant that the world of Kingfisher, the other world, intersected with our world, and that's why a knight could get lost in the woods and return 30 years later and only thinking 30 minutes have passed, because the worlds, the unreal world and the real world intersected. So in a sense, this is my interpretation of that piece of art, is that sometimes things are not what they appear to be, and sometimes the world of magic and wonder is close to our world, and that can be either fantastic dreams or it can be horrendous things, and it's just beyond the scope of what we see. You can be at a very good place in life, and one phone call can rip everything away, and you can be at a completely different place. So it's a play with that notion, and hence I thought that the lyric theme of the album sort of interconnected with that interpretation of this painting. But and it's just a fucking beautiful painting as well. And if you want to see it, it's in the National Museum. So and we tend to work with classic paintings for our cover art. So that's the story behind it.
And I'm getting the album, the vinyl, just so I can get the poster. I mean, I want the album too, mind you, but because I want the poster actually comes in the vinyl while they last. I know those usually go kind of fast, but yeah, it's really beautiful. And what I love about Netherbird is your music typically has all the elements that I personally like in music, and this album, which is one of my favorite of the year, actually has the classic black metal guitars, your vocals, which aren't too screechy like a lot of black metal, and it has melody, it's dark, mysterious, sophisticated, everything that I really, really love, and it flowed really, really well from one song to the next. Now, do you guys put a lot of thought into how the album is going to flow?
We do, actually. I mean, we start writing and we end up with a bunch of songs, but we do actually spend quite some time arranging, trying to find a logical flow in the album, both lyric-wise, but also music-wise. So I'm happy that you noticed. So it's not a coincidence that it is the length it is, and it's the songs in the order they are. But I mean, that's our idea of what's a good album, and you never know. But it's not a coincidence. So it's a lot of work put into it, and we tend to also remove a song or two in order to get what we think is a solid unit of songs that sort of belong together.
Well, it worked. It sounds great. And
glad to hear that.
And one song in particular that I love is track number 5, Eventide Evangel, because it's beautiful, melodic, but kind of sad sounding. So I think it's kind of emotional. So I know, like you had mentioned earlier, you kind of, everybody can interpret the meaning of a song as to how it fits them. But what is that song kind of about?
Yeah, well, it's about not doing so well. Mm-hmm. And like I said, existence can twist pretty quickly from, feeling like you're, on top of everything until you're at the absolute nadir of stuff. I mean, from zenith to nadir, the descent can be quick. That song is really about reflection on the state that everything is fragile. So is your joy, happiness, well-being, whatever. I mean, it can quickly change. But also it is about resolve and about defiance. I mean, we work with what we got, and we fight for what we have and what we think is important. And I tried to capture that in the song that I agree with you. It's a very nice tune. So first when I heard it, I tried to make justice to it by writing lyrics that made sense. I'm happy that it reached you at least.
And you know what? That is a song that I think, and especially in the way things are today, that a lot of people can relate to, Like you said, everybody leaves it open to their own interpretation, and that's definitely one that everybody can relate to, because everybody's been there, or if they haven't been there, they're gonna be there sometime in their life.
They're gonna be there at some point.
So where did you record this, and did you do anything different in the recording process this time around?
This time around, actually, the vocals we recorded actually out in a cabin out in the woods, because I couldn't be around people at that time. I'm not going to go into any details, but I just couldn't be around people. So we set up the vocal recordings quite far into to the Swedish countryside in a little cabin that we could use. So we had guest vocals by a woodpecker on the roof. So that it sounds fucking black metal, right? It's like a cliche. But we actually had to a few times we had to stop recording and chase that fucker away, because it was like with this metal roof, and it was just a few feet above my head. So so actually we recorded vocals there. All the string instruments are recorded in Scarecrow Studios in Stockholm City, and it's our own recording facility. Drums were made in a studio called Ving Studios with Sverker Viggen, who's a phenomenal guy to work with. So basically we tracked everything in various locations in Sweden. Then we sent it to Hilly, our producer in Finland, who mixed it, as the next step, sent it all to Germany, where Don Swane mastered it. So it was a little bit of a different way of working, because previously we always produced our own stuff, but this time we worked with an external producer, which I think was really good.
And you know, when everything is all said and done, and the album is all done, and you guys are going to hear it for the first time in its completed form, do you ever get nervous before you hear it after all that work went into that? I would be like, I hope this came out really good. We worked so hard on this. Do you ever get nervous, or no? I wish I could say, we're nervous, and then we're so happy when we get to hear it. I mean, that's not really how it works, because you heard those fucking songs a million times, and all I hear is, stuff that could have been done better. So you become extremely self-critical. So I can appreciate an album much more 5 years down the line, when I sort of forgot the process of it. I mean, of course, when you get to hear it, it's like, it sounds fairly good, but you have really no sense of perspective. I don't know if this sounds good or not, so I have to read the reviews. I mean, and I could tell you that I don't mind reviews or don't care about them, but that would be a lie. I need the reviews in order to know, does it make sense to other people? Right.
So you can ask me in 5 years if it's a good album. I still don't know.
So what format is it going to be released on?
It's on LP, on CD, and on digital. And this time, it's the first release we do with a German label called Eisenwald. And we're very happy with the collaboration. They've been great so far. There are some other well-known bands that they're like WADA, Panzerfaust, which is a new discovery for me. Awesome band. So the label has really been taking care of a lot of stuff when it comes to the formats and packaging and stuff. So it's great. So it's on all medias except cassette.
And so what's going on with the band for the rest of the year? I know this album is just, like I said, it'll just have come out when we air this. Are you doing anything special for the release? Are you playing any hometown shows or anything like that?
No, not really. Currently, Bismarck, my collaborator when it comes to songwriting, has moved to England to get some other perspectives in life, and that's great. So we're taking it a little bit slow with actively looking for gigs. I mean, we have a few shows planned, but they are for next year. I'm pretty sure there will be a few shows also this year, but we haven't really been actively looking for them. But of course, if the opportunity comes, we'll gig. And basically what we are going to do, we're going to write the next album currently, and then I think we're going to pick up more live shows for next year.
And if people want to learn more about the band and where they can pick up merchandise, what's the best site for that?
Netherbird.com. From there, you can find links to wherever, or just Google it. I think our stuff is distributed quite nicely, so you should be able to find it on your favorite digital platform or your online CD or LP vendor. It should be everywhere.
And there we go. Netherbird has a new album out now on Eisenwald Records called Into The Vast Uncharted. We will be hearing some tracks on tonight's show. It's one of my favorite albums of the year for sure. Nephente, as always, thank you for coming on the show to talk about the new album, and all the best to you and the band.
Thank you so much for having us, and thanks for the support, and keep it metal.